Hello friends, welcome to Dr. Ossai Physiology Academy, DOPA for short. This is the place where we make the learning of physiology easy, exciting, and effective. Thank you for joining me. So if you're new to this channel, you're especially welcome. Just kindly click the like button, the subscribe button, and turn on the notifications if you love the content we share. All right? Thank you very much. So now we're going to be continuing with this special, interesting topic. Is a topic that has to do with food, how food is handled by the gastrointestinal tract, okay, or the digestive tract. The gastrointestinal tract is also called gut. That's layman language, gut, all right, or alimentary canal. Alimentary canal. In the part one of this lecture, we talked about the layers, okay? The different parts, how they are separated by sphincters. We mentioned them, okay? And the different layers, longitudinal layer, serosa, secular, smooth muscle layer, submucosa, mucosa, epithelium, microvate, all those structures. You can look for the video and watch. Okay, so today, the special thing we're going to be talking about is the innervation of the GIT. Now, the GIT is very special in the sense that it's the only part of the body that can function without the involvement of the central nervous system. Now, the central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, okay? The spinal cord, from the spinal cord, different nerves, both somatic nerves, autonomic nerves. That's the nerves that supply muscles, skeletal muscles, the nerves, autonomic nerves that supply smooth muscles that are without voluntary control. So they control a lot of things. Everywhere is connected. Okay? It controls them. But this GIT, they are supplied by nerves. Remember that nerves, when they are excited, they can help in the contraction of muscles. When they are not excited or inhibited, the muscles can relax, okay? They also help in the secretion of gland. Remember that when you're talking about control of the internal process of the body, physiological processes, in that the control system, the 5 components, one of them is effectors. And we said effectors are muscles and glands, okay? So they have control through nervous mechanisms and they all come from the central nervous system. But this GIT has a special role. It's connected to the central nervous system, quite all right. But it now has its own nervous system. You understand? It has its own special, it is called the enteric nervous system, ANS for short. Okay? The enteric nervous system. When we were talking about the layers of the GIT in the part 1, we mentioned 2 plexuses. If you can remember, one of them is the myenteric plexus. Myenteric plexus, also known as Auerbach's plexus. Auerbach's plexus. And number 2, submucosal plexus. Okay, which is also known as Meissner's plexus. Now, these two, they form the enteric nervous system. Okay, so they are located, this one is located in between. We mentioned all this, we are now revisiting it and focusing on it now. It's located between the longitudinal smooth muscle and the circular smooth muscle. Okay, between longitudinal smooth muscle and circular smooth muscle. Then this one is now located between the circular smooth muscle, between the circular smooth muscle and the submucosal layer. So, looking at this arrangement, it will tell you a lot about their function. Remember, the enteric nervous system, okay? The nerves, they are there to control the functions of the GIT, which we mentioned. You have one, motility, movement through the contraction of muscle. You have secretion, then digestion and absorption. Okay, so these two, they have special role. One, you see how there's a division of labor. There's a division of labor between them. Now, effectors, the effectors, smooth muscle, number two, glands. So they share the work between themselves. Okay? So this myenteric plexus, look at it. It's located in between two different types of muscles. So it controls the actions of those muscles in a very sophisticated way. Okay? Sometimes when it's making one muscle type to contract, it is inhibiting another type. Sometimes when it's making the muscle before the food to contract, it will make the muscle after the food to relax. So they function in a very sophisticated way. But let's not really bother ourselves with those mechanisms. Those are just the actions of neurotransmitters. Okay? They have neurotransmitters that are inhibitory. They inhibit action potential from happening. Some neurotransmitters, they stimulate and enable. That's how they just function. Okay? So this myenteric plexus, Ehrbach's plexus, they do what? They are involved in muscular smooth muscle contraction. This one. Then the submucosal plexus, which is more abundant. That's why it's located between circular and it's close to this submucosal layer. Now, after the submucosal layer, you also have the mucosal layer. So these two layers, they have a lot of glands. You have submucosal glands, you have mucosal glands. So their function is to excite and stimulate the glands so that they will do what? They will secrete their content, which could be aqueous content, water, electrolytes, and very importantly, enzymes, digestive enzymes. So this one does this. All right. So what we have said now is the fact that this enteric nervous system functions on its own with these two. So this is called the intrinsic innervation. Okay? It's a very straightforward, simple stuff. Intrinsic innervation of the GIT. So you also have the extrinsic innervation. We're going to talk about that shortly. But there's something you need to think about. Now, ask yourself, what actually excites intrinsic? Remember that we said it can function without cut off the central nervous system supplying it. Alone, the GIT can function. So what do you think can excite them and stimulate them to make the muscle contract or make the glands to contract? Think about it for a moment. The answer is very simple. It is food. But this food stimulates it in two ways. Okay? A mechanical stimulation and the chemical stimulation. What do we mean? Now, food is bulky. It has bulk. Okay? When you swallow, you roll the content of it in your mouth. It now becomes what they call a bolus. Okay? That's like a ball. So it occupies space. So when food enters the GIT, it does what? It stretches it. Stretch. Okay? So it stretches the wall of the GIT. And there are certain receptors known as mechanoreceptors or stretch receptors. Okay? So this one, mechanoreceptors. It's good you understand this foundation, mechanoreceptors. So this food that we said has physical bulk that can stretch, volume that can stretch the wall of the intestine. Food also in itself is a chemical substance. Food is chemical. Okay? It has a lot of chemical in it. So the presence of food in itself can stimulate what you know known as chemoreceptors. Chemoreceptors. So these are the two powerful receptors that control this enteric nervous system, regardless of its connection with the central nervous system or the other part of the autonomic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system, you have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Okay? So this enteric nervous system, it's another type of autonomic system. Just that it is special. That's why we usually discuss it specially. Sometimes we discuss it with the autonomic nervous system that we know, parasympathetic, and sometimes we discuss it alone under GIT. Okay, they are special. So these are the two things. So note it very carefully. Mechanoreceptors, the stretching activates enteric nervous system. Chemicals, they are chemoreceptors. They detect those chemicals that the food contains and stimulates the enteric nervous system to perform these two functions. Contraction of smooth muscle and secretion of substances, enzymes, electrolytes, water, and all of that. Right? So we're going to be doing the extrinsic innervation after this break. Right, welcome back. So now we're not talking about the extrinsic innervation. No, we said it has intrinsic that can function independently. Doesn't need the extrinsic. But under normal circumstances, you need the extrinsic to empower what the intrinsic can do without its help. Okay? So this is external help. So it's coming from the central nervous system. Okay, the central nervous system is this brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord, several nerves come out of it, autonomic nerves, which are divided into parasympathetic, and number 2, sympathetic. So these are the 2 branches of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, the enteric nervous system functions exactly with the similar way with this normal autonomic nervous, just that it is special. It doesn't need to be connected to the central nervous system to function. These ones, they have to be connected to they're connected to the spinal cord, which is part of the central. All right. So these 2 divisions of the autonomic nervous system, they influence. When you look at the anatomy, study the diagram, you see that apart from the intrinsic, which is located within the walls, like we have said, in this between circular and longitudinal muscle, between circular muscle and submucosa, then the extrinsic now comes and joins them. It joins these 2 plexuses to influence them. All right? So that's why when we start talking about GI secretion, I'm just digressing a little, you find out that sometimes just thinking about food or seeing food with your eye can start stimulating salivation and secretions in your stomach in expectation and anticipation of that food. It's coming from this extrinsic because they are connected to the brain. Okay? So you seeing food, it's your brain, your eyes, and it's affect through the extrinsic, and now it now empowers and stimulates this intrinsic, and we all go there. So the function is just to empower and enhance the activity of this myenteric and submucosal plexuses. All right. So now let's start with parasympathetic. The parasympathetic nerve, one of them is a very, very important nerve. It's called cranial nerve 10. Cranial nerve 10X, which is known as the vagus nerve. Interestingly, this vagus nerve is what does 75% of the work. It supplies 75% of this parasympathetic supply to the GIT. Only one nerve. Can you imagine that? So this vagus nerve supplies what? 75% of the parasympathetic supply to, which goes from the upper GIT, okay? From the esophagus, as from the middle third of the esophagus. You know that the upper third of the esophagus has skeletal muscle, so it's not supplied by. So from that upper middle third of esophagus down stomach, the intestines, to the large intestine, ascending colon, and a little of the transverse colon. So upper GIT, just put it upper GIT, to the upper part, or the first part. Let's put it first part of transverse colon. Okay? Now you have the ascending, transverse, descending. So it supplies so many, everything. Then you now have another one, pelvic nerve, which now supplies from the remaining of the transverse column down to close to the anus. Okay? pelvic nerve supplies the rest. Just put it, supplies the rest of the GIT, the lower part of the GIT. Okay? So this is the parasympathetic supply. And what is special about this parasympathetic supply is that this parasympathetic supply is usually stimulatory. I want you to note this very well. It's usually stimulatory. That means it stimulates movement, motility. It stimulates secretion. So it enables the functions of the GIT. All the functions, stimulation, digest, everything. Okay? This one. But this parasympathetic does the opposite. It's usually inhibitory. You see that? It inhibits the GIT. And when you are learning about the autonomic system, which focuses on these two, you will see that one of the things that will enable you to understand their actions is that the sympathetic is for flight or fight. We call it the flight or fight response. It's like energetic danger responses. And in that, when you are trying to fight or to run, at that moment, what you need is energy in your muscles, your skeletal muscles. So it places priority on those areas that will enable you to either fight well and run well. At that moment, you don't need food to be digesting, your intestines to be working and moving. It's not priority at that moment. So that's why you can easily use this understanding to remember the sympathetic inhibits the GIT. Okay? So one of the major neurotransmitters of this parasympathetic is known as acetylcholine. Okay? Neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Alright? So, to refer to the response of this parasympathetic, we can call it cholinergic. Cholinergic. Acetylcholine. Cholinergic nerves. Okay, we refer to the nerves, they are cholinergic because they secrete acetylcholine mainly. But some of them also secrete some other substances that are peptides. Peptides are from amino acids. When amino acids combine, they form peptides and so on. So you call them peptidergic nerves. Okay? It secretes peptides, while this one secretes acetylcholine. So that is that for the parasympathetic. So let's talk a little about this sympathetic. This sympathetic has 4 different nerves. Okay? No, we'll say this one has vagus and pelvic nerve. Okay? This is 75% and so on. But this sympathetic has 4. It's called, one of them is celiac nerve. Another one is superior mesenteric nerve. Another one is inferior mesenteric. Then the last one is hypogastric nerve. 4 of them. Celiac, the first part. Superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric, hypogastric. So they supply different parts. This celiac, the upper part, usually around the stomach and all of that. Superior mesenteric, some part of the intestine, large intestine, down, hypogastric. Okay? So the neurotransmitter is usually adrenaline or epinephrine. Okay? So the neurotransmitter of this one is called epinephrine. But because its older name, adrenaline, so they call it the nerves, adrenergic nerves. Okay? So the nerves here is called adrenergic nerves. Okay? So just think about this, and it's not difficult to understand. You know the function. The function is inhibitory, sympathetic, and they secrete epinephrine from adrenergic nerves. This one is stimulatory. They secrete acetylcholine or peptides, and they're called cholinergic nerves, peptidergic nerves. All right, so this parasympathetic stimulates, this one inhibits, leading to a fine coordination. You know, physiological processes, they function through opposing forces, inhibition, stimulation. So they balance themselves. All right, all leading to a fine coordination between motility, secretion, which are the two major functions that now enable digestion and absorption of food. All right, so that's what you need to know about this innervation of the GIT. Now, another part that you need to, blood supply, it's not really, you don't need that to understand the function of the GIT, so there's no need going into that. You learn that in anatomy. It's called the splanchnic circulation. All right, you can look that up. All right, so I've written a book on GIT physiology. You can check the description box. You see the link there. And other aspects of physiology, you can download it from Okada Books, soft copy for just a token. Okay, then also you can check out our website. The link is also there in the description box, so you can see other things we are doing to make the learning of physiology easy, exciting, and effective. So see you in the next video.